Hey everybody, Gromos here with another War Thunder Simulator battle video. And in this one I want to take a look at the P-38E Lightning, one of the new planes we got in 1.53. Now the P-38G, the only P-38 we had in game pre-1.53, is one of the most requested planes on my channel. However, so far I did not want to make a video about it, since it is also one of the planes with a history of incredibly bad flight models. While it got a lot of changes to how it flew before 1.53, the P-38 was never able to stall or spin as it should, for example, which kept me from flying the plane till now. In 1.53, however, the flight model got updated on the P-38G as well as the new P-38s we got in the batch, the early E model as well as the J and the L after the G. And the plane will now stall and with a bit of convincing even enter a proper spin. I would not call the flight model perfect by any means, but a big improvement over what the plane had previously in the last 2 years. It's good enough to make a few videos about it, and since we got a few new Lightnings and many people want to see it, that is what I will do. Well, since we got a few different P-38s now in the game, I plan on doing multiple videos on them. To start things off with, I fly the lowest one we got now, the P-38E in this video, and then in a later video the J or the L. So, the P-38E, let's take a look at it. The P-38 was initially developed as a long-range high-altitude interceptor to engage bombers at high altitude and as far away from their intended target as possible. The interceptor category, however, was supposedly at the time created to get around restrictions of how much armament a fighter was allowed to carry and how its layout was supposed to look like. As for single-seat fighters at the time, the mid to late 30s, only a single engine and relatively light armament was allowed by the Army Air Corps. With simply creating a new category of fighter, which they called Interceptor, they did not have to abide by those rules and could do what they thought was best for the plane they had in mind. A single-seat long-range fighter. The plane is obviously pretty unique for a single-seater, with its twin-engine, twin-boom layout. There were of course other twin-engine fighters developed and in service at the same time, like the Bf-110 or the Fokker G1, but they were generally 2- or 3-seat planes with a tail gunner, which added weight and bulk, and that slowed those planes down. The P-38 however can match and in some cases surpass the speed of contemporary single-engine fighters. The P-38 also uses exhaust-driven turbo superchargers. Those early turbochargers need a lot of space within the plane, which was a problem for many early designs using them, leading to some weird-looking planes like the XB-37. On the P-38, however, there is sufficient space for the turbos in the 2 tail booms, so the high-altitude performance of the plane is very good. Overall, by the time the US entered the war, the P-38 was the most capable fighter in the USSAF inventory in the air-to-air role, with the P-40s and the P-39s being only mediocre in that role and only fitted with single-stage, single-speed superchargers, giving them insufficient altitude performance. The plane feels more at home in the Pacific scenarios than the European ones though, as in the Pacific ones the P-38 generally has a good speed advantage versus most of its opponents, especially Cirrus and Hayabusas, and is therefore quite superior to them. In the European scenarios that is less often the case. Now, the E version I fly in this video is the first version that saw combat in the traditional setup with 4 50 cal machine guns and a 20mm cannon in the nose. Earlier models had a 23mm or 37mm cannon. The first one that was fitted with the 20mm Hispano cannon was an export version for the Royal Air Force. However, because of an export ban on the Lightning's turbocharged engines, those British models were fitted with engines without turbos, which were also not counter-rotating. The planes as a result performed very poorly and were not used by the British. However, the 20mm Hispano cannon proved to be an improvement over the 23 and 37mm cannons, and were therefore used in the E and all later models of the Lightning. That gives the plane a very heavy and focused armament, which allows you to take out targets very fast. The E of course also has weaker engines than later P-38s, and its speed advantage is not quite as high as it is on later ones, but still fast enough. So let's take a look at 2 battles in the P-38E. This one takes place on the Wake Island map. At the start of the map I climb towards the northeast after takeoff to get a bit of altitude to play with before I engage. However, enemy planes show up over the island soon and the fight breaks out, so I come around to get in the action. I'm not really higher than the fight yet, but I can still build up a good amount of speed while flying towards the fight in a straight line, while the planes fighting there will be somewhat slower as they are maneuvering. So the plan is to fly in, pick off an enemy plane if possible, and then zoom above the fight. A Zero shows up in my sights fighting a P-36. The P-36 does a good job of making the Zero overshoot, but I had the Zero already in my sight, so I fire, and the heavy armament of the Lightning works as advertised and takes the Zero out. And I use my speed to zoom straight up. Now I looked back as I did so, in case someone is following me, but sadly the cloud cover is pretty low, and I fly into the clouds and can't see anything behind me anymore. So I didn't notice an enemy fighter going after me, probably also diving from altitude. I can't quite identify it, but it's a twin-engine fighter as well. I took a hit or two, but nothing serious, and I dive away a bit, looking back to see what the enemy fighter does. A Buffalo was already on the twin, so it does not follow me anymore, so I come around to attack again. As I do so though, I notice another enemy fighter, a single-engined Hayabusa this time, climbing and coming towards me. But from that position he can't catch me. I'm already pretty fast and I can build up more speed in a dive, and the Hayabusa would have to turn around to follow me. So I just dive away a bit, and at the same time a friendly plane calls for help in front of me, so I decide to go for a head-on attack on the enemy plane in front of me while diving away from the Hayabusa. It seems I get a hit on the Hayabusa I attacked, but not enough to take it out. Looking back, I can see that nobody is following me, so I do a high turn and come around and attack the Hayabusa that is after the friendly plane again. I dive back down towards where I expect them to be, assuming they are still flying away from me and I can attack from behind. They turned around however and pass below me, and I can't adjust my flight path fast enough to get a shot. Another friendly plane is behind the Hayabusa already though, so I look for another target that might go after them as I climb back up. I can't spot one in front, but as I look back I can see the enemy twin-engine fighter is back, and I roll and push the nose down to get out of his line of fire. Now I can straight up outmaneuver those Ki-45s if I have to, as my roll rate is better, but for now I keep an eye on the situation as not to waste my speed if I don't have to. The twin, a Ki-45 I'm guessing, is followed by a P-40, which is followed by a Hayabusa, which is followed by a P-36. The Ki-45 is still following me, and I'm just about to engage, as the P-40 takes it out and it goes down. So I start to climb again to regain some altitude, and then turn around and start to move back towards the west of the island, where I can still see some AA fire and some planes fighting, to look for something else to shoot at. As I fly that way, I can spot a plane in that direction on lower altitude, and I dive towards it. The plane fires a burst, and by the color of the tracers I can see that it is a friendly plane. I get a bit closer trying to find what he was shooting at, but I can't see it at the moment, so I pull up again, and as I do so I can see another plane to my left coming towards us. When I take a closer look, it turns out to be a Hayabusa, and in a good position for frontal attack, so I bring the nose around and get ready to fire a burst as the Hayabusa passes in front of me. My burst hits the wing and takes a part of it off, and then I pull up in a zoom climb. A second enemy plane passes me as I do so, and at first it looked like a KS-61 to me because of the white color scheme. I turn around hoping I might get my nose around quick enough to get a shot at it, but I notice that it is a Zero and I don't want to be on slow speed anywhere near those, so I push my nose down and speed up again, flying towards the airfield. I can see a lot of friendly planes going the other way, but my engines are getting pretty hot. You have to be careful not to stay on web too long with the P-38, so I want a bit of distance and cool down the engine while regaining some altitude. However, there's some AA fire around this airfield indicating enemy planes. One, a bomber or another twin-engine fighter, is above me, currently out of my range, but I can also see some AA in the west, back where I just came from, on lower altitude, indicating enemy planes in that direction in a better position to attack. The twin-engine plane on higher altitude to my left is moving away, and I am not even entirely sure if it is a player or an NPC, so I focus on what I can see to the west. And I can see quite a few planes coming my way from there now. So I slowly come around towards them, picking up some speed as I slowly descend, getting ready to attack something and then zoom climb again, as before. As I dive, I don't need much thrust at the moment, so I can throttle back the engines to cool them down while still gaining some speed. As I close in, I can get a closer look at the planes and I can identify them. The one in front is a P-40 diving down, and it is followed by a Zero, maybe the one I saw earlier. So as they come past me, I come around in a yo-yo turn to go after the Zero and get it off the P-40. However, there's already a P-39 behind the Zero and something else friendly as well. So as always, I break off my pursuit and go up to support the friendlies in case they get attacked. I look around for another enemy planes coming in, but can't see one. But as I do so, the Zero that chased the P-40 noticed it is under attack and did a very tight turn, coming towards me. So I fire a quick snapshot as it passes me. I thought I missed it at first, but looking back it turns out I did not and the Zero blew up. However, I do not expect the Zero to be the only plane. I saw more before and the AA is still firing below me. And as I dive back down, I can spot the Hayabusa attacking a Corsair that just took off from the airfield. The Hayabusa rolls around the Corsair, which is still very slow, and slots in behind it and starts to fire, but presents a good target as it does so, and I fire a quick burst at it. And the heavy armament of the P-38 once again does its job well on the light enemy plane. Now, with most of the enemy planes close by taken out for the moment and my engine still pretty hot, I decide to move away from the island a bit to climb and cool them down a bit more while I wait for more enemy planes showing up and another fight to develop. After circling behind the island a bit, I can see some more AA and tracer fire from the island at low altitude, indicating more enemy planes, and I start to make my way back there to engage. I dive down on what I at first think is a Hayabusa attacking a P-36, but it turns out to be another P-36, so I have to pull back up and scan for another target as I go back up. I can spot another plane a bit further out, and the AA is firing on that one, and this time I can identify it as a Hayabusa as I dive towards it. The Hayabusa turns after the P-36 and I try to get a shot at it as I dive towards it. My lead is not quite right though, and as I fire I don't do any noticeable damage and I turn more than I should have, trying to get a shot, wasting some speed. As I pull up again for the next attack, I look back and I can see a K-61 behind me coming in at high speed. I move out of the way, but not before taking a hit, but again nothing serious. I lose some lift on the left wing and the plane tends to roll a little bit now, but not enough to be a problem. Now the Ki-61 apparently came in with high speed and zooms up above me. Now my P-38E is just a little bit faster than a Ki-61, but the Ki-61 has the altitude advantage to counter that, since the difference in speed in this case is very small. Also, a turn fight against it would be a bad idea for a P-38. However, a P-36 can dogfight a Ki-61 just fine, so my plan is to dive towards the P-36 that is dogfighting the Hayabusa and take out the Hayabusa. If the Ki-61 follows, I can fight it with the P-36's help. I get the Hayabusa, but it looks like the Ki-61 did not directly follow, and I can see a second plane turning with the P-36. I come around rather aggressively to attack the one too, because again the idea is to get the P-36 free to help against the Ki-61 if it shows again. I go up to get above the P-36 and attack the enemy plane if it comes in behind it, but as I come down I can't spot the enemy plane anymore and the Ki-61 does not show up either. So I decide to keep on going and try to attack something on high speed over our airfield, as I can see some AA there indicating enemy planes. As I look back I can see another twin-engine fighter, probably a Ki-45, coming in behind me attacking planes on the airfield, so I go up and come around to engage that one. I hope the Ki-45 keeps flying straight after its attack, so I can roll around and get behind it, but it turns around into me, making the angle for an attack too steep at first. So I have to follow the Ki-55 as it attacks a plane on the airfield again. Meanwhile, the Ki-61 from earlier gets taken out by the airfield AA, as it also strafes a plane on the runway. I slot in behind the Ki-45 as it leaves the island and start to fire. My plane is a bit shaky at first, but then I get a few hits, and as I pull away, a P-40 finishes the Ki-45 off. Now, there's still a small number of enemy planes around, but by now we have the advantage in numbers and they get taken out before I can get there, and the game is almost over now. So I decide to sink a few targets of opportunity before the game ends. So this is it for this first fight on Wake. Let's take a look at the second one. This is the next match I played. This one takes place on the Saipan map, and I spawn in a bit late via the join in progress. I am on my way from the friendly held island towards the enemy held one, and I can spot some planes over the friendly fleet. The fleet is firing on them, so they have to be enemy. Again, I'm not higher, but I can build up some speed in a straight line and I close in on a Zero from behind. The Zero sees me coming and turns tight and comes around towards me. But I have a huge energy advantage at this point. I'm pretty fast and the Zero is losing a lot of speed in its turn, so I just point my nose up and go straight up, looking back to keep an eye on the Zero, which nowadays, thanks to the new graphics engine, is a lot easier than it used to be. And then I dive back down on the Zero, which I think has lost sight of me as I went up, since it does not do any tight evasive maneuvers as I come back down at it. I can line up a good deflection shot and I fire a burst as soon as I'm in range, and my fire takes the Zero's wing off, and then I go back up, looking back for threats that might follow me. I can see a plane behind me, but it is a Corsair and I'm soon above it. Now, I saw more than one plane around here when I approached the area at first, and the AA from the fleet is still firing. It might be shooting on the destroyed Zero as it goes down, or another enemy plane. And indeed, as I take a closer look at where the AA is firing, I can spot a second Zero below me, and I dive down to attack it. I also throttle back just a bit to cool down the engines as I dive down. I can build up a good amount of speed nonetheless as I approach the Zero, and he does not see me in time to take evasive action as I come in at high speed from above and behind and slightly offset to the side. I line up another deflection shot and press the trigger. The burst hit, setting the Zero on fire and taking it out, and then I use my speed to climb back up and look around for more targets. The anti-aircraft fire from the ships below me seems to stop though, short of a few rounds after destroyed Zero as it goes down, so there don't appear to be any more planes in the immediate vicinity. However, a friendly calls for help over the island, and as I take a closer look I can see quite a few planes over there, so I point my nose that direction. The fight seems to be roughly at the same altitude than I am again, so my plan is again to fly towards it, building up speed as I do so, pick a plane off as I fly through the furball and then zoom above the fight. With the planes in the fight being slower than me because they are maneuvering. One of the planes I fly towards is firing and I can see 50 cal tracer, so this one is a friendly chasing an enemy plane. The enemy plane dives away with the friendly in pursuit, so I focus on the planes still at altitude, trying to identify who's enemy to attack them. They are a bit too far away to tell the type yet though. I only know that the ones diving away are an enemy plane chased by a friendly, and it appears the enemy plane eventually gets too fast as it dives away and rips a wing. I can see another plane climbing up though, and this one is firing and I can see the typical orange Japanese tracers, so this one is enemy. A twin-engine plane which could provide a good target as it slows down in its climb. So I point my nose at the twin-engine fighter, probably a Ki-45, and get ready to attack it. However, shortly after that I can see yet another plane climbing up and firing to the right of that one and attacking a friendly P-38. This one is an immediate threat towards a team member, so I change target and go for this one. The enemy plane turns out to be a premium Focke-Wulf 190, and as it loses speed at the peak of its climb, I line up a shot and fire a burst which takes the Focke-Wulf out. I lost a bit more speed as I would have hoped lining the Focke-Wulf 190 up, so I can't climb quite as much as I wanted, and I'm a bit worried about the Ki-45, which I can't see at this point. I'm fairly sure I was still fast enough to get above the Ki-45 after taking out the Focke-Wulf, but I'm not 100% sure. Looking around, however, I can see a fight on low altitude below me, and since I can't spot the Ki-45, I go down there to help out the team. I check my rear again as I dive down to make sure the Ki-45 is really not around. As I dive down I can spot a P-38 at first, and then a bit above it a few planes turning. One of them is Zero. I line up the Zero hoping I can take it out in a high-speed pass from the front. The Zero turns to the right though, and when I fire at it I miss or don't do damage, and I climb up again looking back for another target to dive on. One enemy plane is going down, a twin-engine fighter, and I hope it is the one I saw earlier, because then I don't have to worry about that one still being on altitude above me. As I loop around and dive back down, a Zero comes into my view again, and I go after it. It levels out and flies straight, and I hope I can attack it from behind before it starts to maneuver again, but I am a bit too late. The Zero turns hard to the right, and I adjust my aim to fire a quick deflection shot, but no damage, so I go back up again. I want to be conservative with my maneuvering in such attacks, so to not let the Zero run me low on energy through tight turns when trying to get a shot. Sure, it looks like we have the upper hand right now, but especially with join in progress, you never know when you have a few more surprise Zeros showing up, and then you don't want to be low and slow in your American fighter. But for now we do have the upper hand, and as I dive down I can see a Ki-61 which is chased by a captured Zero and an enemy Zero in front of them. As I get closer, the Ki-61 pulls up hard, and I know that the Zero will catch him in that move, so I go after the far Zero. As I get close enough to the Zero, it looks like it's already damaged, but I finish it off to make sure it goes down and doesn't come back. The captured Zero took out the Ki-61, and then I pull up to get some altitude back. Now it seems the fight is dying down and I can't spot any more planes right away. Now my engines are a bit hot, so I decide to slowly make my way back to our island, climbing and cooling down my engines. I got a bit of AA coming my way, which worried me for a second as I thought it might be friendly AA firing at the close enemy plane, but it is enemy AA from the airfield taking a few pot shots at me. But then I can see some tracers below me though. So I roll around and push the nose down to take a look at where they are coming from. At first I can only see a XP-50, a premium plane but a friendly one, and no enemy planes nearby, but he must have fired at something. And the ship AA is also firing again. When I pull back up and I look behind me to where the ship's AA is firing, I can spot another plane back there, a Zero by the looks of it, and I come around to engage it. The XP-50 also fires at the Zero, but the Zero is still in the fight it seems. I approach it from the rear at first, but as I close in on the Zero turns around and is almost coming in my direction. Now the Zero is coming almost directly at me, so I don't need much lead, and I line up a shot and I fire. I get some good hits this time and the Zero blows up. And I go back towards climbing and cooling down my engines. However, that was one of the last enemy planes and the last one crashes shortly after, so this is it for this fight. Well, those were a few fights in the P-38E, a powerful plane especially in Pacific scenarios. However, not quite as good as later versions with their stronger engines, and I think I will make another video about either the J or the L soon. Well, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.